Turn one soul ring.
Wow. Okay, he's just throwing us into it. I got it, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I had to scramble a little bit at the beginning there.
Countdown, go.
Go.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Well, let's just start this shit. So this is Turn One Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And I'm Riley.
And today on the show, we're going to be dexplaining Eric's Ghen, Weaver of Curses commander deck. And we normally start with a little backstory on the legendary creature that whomever has built the deck around. But I couldn't find a single thing about this character in the MTG multiverse. I did look. You know when you look up an MTG character from a card, and it takes you to there's I guess it's like the wiki, like MTG wiki or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It takes you to the list of secondary characters in order of planes, and you know you're not going to find anything at that point. And if you do, it's going to be like very. It's going to be it's going to be even less than Kin Bond or Prodigy.
Yeah.
So he wasn't even on the list. So all we know about him is, I guess, his flavor text, which is any apprentice with a spellbook can. Let me start over. Any apprentice with a spellbook and 2 sticks can churn out a fireball. This is different. This is art.
Oh, he's making art.
He's making art. I like his art. I like it.
He is the weaver of arcanums.
Yeah, you can't spell art. You can't spell the beginning of art without arcanum, right?
There you go.
Yeah, like the first 2 letters of art.
Yeah, that's the beginning. Yeah. So in lieu of that, we're just going to start with the deck list and wrap things up with a few honorable mentions from Riley and myself. But before we get to any of that, Eric, how can listeners find us out there on the internet?
You can find us over on Instagram. Turn One Soul Ring the Podcast. We have a Gmail account. You can get in touch with it that way. Turn One Soul Ring the Podcast at gmail.com. Send us anything you want. Also, we are throwing everything up onto YouTube. Search Turn One Soul Ring the Podcast. You find us the easiest that way. And if you like what we do, check us out over on Patreon. Patreon.com/Turn One Soul Ring.
If nothing else, I think you'll find the titles and the description of our reward tiers. I think they'll tickle you, and our editor Ainsley came up with those, so that's where the praise for those goes. So, anyways, Eric built around Ghen, Arcanum Weaver, and he costs Grixis Mardu. Excuse me. Red, white, and black for a 2/3 legendary human wizard. He has an activated ability. I think it's a he. He has an activated ability that also costs Mardu and a tap, sacrifice an enchantment, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's pretty clear what this legendary creature wants us to do. We usually ask the deck builder what is the goal of this deck. I think it's probably pretty evident with the commander, but Eric, why don't you give us a little more insight on that?
Sure. So obviously the commander likes enchantments. That's what the deck's going for. But I thought Mardu was an interesting color for enchantments, and so this is obviously, by the title of the deck name, really gone towards something of curses. There aren't many curses in Magic, so it's there's not many to choose from. So I have curses, and I have cards that do curse-like things in the deck. Basically, you're kind of like taxing people and all that kind of stuff. This is an interesting deck to play as well, because obviously curses only target one person. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely, if you just only target one person, they're really not going to like you. You might have a little bit of a fight there. You could always try and like spread the curses out one by one. Maybe people won't attack you, but probably they're not going to like all the curses on them. So it's an interesting style to go towards, but I think he's the best one we've seen so far to really do like a curse style deck. So that's why I was like, let's throw it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if nothing else, it does seem like a lot of fun. So, as usual, we're going to get to the deck categories now, and you'll be able to follow along with us by using the Deckstats link at the top of the show notes. And we are going to start off here with the curses. Now, like Eric said, I thought there were a lot more curses in Magic And specifically in these colors like black and red and white, like those, I can actually think of curses in those colors. But I guess curses really haven't been around that long in Magic, like the card subtype.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because it actually says like aura curse in the subtype.
yeah. In this category, we have 11 cards. We have Captive Audience, Cruel Reality, Curse of Bloodletting, Curse of Disturbance, Curse of Exhaustion, Curse of Fool's Wisdom, Curse of Misfortunes, Curse of Opulence, Curse of the Nightly Hunt, Overwhelming Splendor, and Torment of Scarabs. So right
Say
up,
curse one more time.
Curse, Curse of Captive Audience. So right up top here with Captive Audience, one of my favorite cards in recent years. It's not a curse, but you do get to give it to someone as soon as it comes into play. I'll just read it. It's 5 black red for an enchantment. Captive Audience enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Your life total becomes 4. Discard your hand. Each opponent creates 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So I guess after you choose one that hasn't been chosen, it just kind of sits there like an enchantment that doesn't do anything.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, I love this card so much though. Man, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember my opponent choosing to go down to 4 life and then casting a big Sphinx's Revelation. It was in a Mardu deck, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll just unattach my Sunforger to go find a Boros Charm and nug them over the dome for 4." So that was pretty memorable.
It's pretty good. So talking about curses here, this is where this is really interesting, especially with Captive Audience is a little bit different, and it doesn't jive as well with the deck as the other things. But with Ghen, like if we have a curse attached to somebody and they die, the curse is still you can like repurpose them. Where like Captive Audience is physically owned by the player that you're putting it on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so it's just going to get exiled when they die.
Yeah.
Right, but because when you curse someone, it's like when you enchant a player's permanent, you control that enchantment. So what's great about Ghen and curses, where they'd normally kind of be one-shot effects, with Ghen you can sacrifice them and for something else, and then sacrifice something else to bring back those curses to put on another player. If I'm understanding how the enchant player works, which is just it adds a whole nother level to curses, and I think makes them a lot more powerful.
Yeah, that's exactly why Gen's really good, because you're able to get like enchantments back out of the graveyard. Mm-hmm. So he's the perfect one to do the enchantments or the curses with. But yeah, Captive Audience is that one different one where you're not going to be able to sacrifice it or bring it back after it's been used, unless the opponent somehow destroys it, and then you can reuse it again.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you can make a deal with someone so they'll destroy it, and you can wheel and deal. I think this could be a very political deck.
Yeah.
I love Curse of Misfortunes, being 4 and a black for an enchantment or a curse. Enchant player, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library for a curse card that doesn't have the same name as a curse attached to enchanted player. Put it onto the battlefield attached to that player, then shuffle your library. So you could just like target one person just to wreck them with curses.
Whoever gets the Curse of Misfortunes is really unfortunate.
Well, yeah, whoever ramps the hardest, you can throw that onto them and just watch them get mad.
Yeah. I do love some other cards like Curse of Opulence. I find is a really fun card, because then people are going to want to attack that player to get mana.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is also the Curse of Disturbance, which does the same thing, but then whenever you attack the cursed player, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So with these cards as well, to explain, the attacking player gets one, but you also get one as well.
Yeah. I noticed that you didn't include the white curse from this cycle, Eric. Why is that?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure I was like...
It's gain 2 life.
Oh, right, yes. Right. Yeah. don't really care about life.
Yeah, must not have deserved a slot.
It's like,
No.
who wants to attack somebody for 2 life? Like,
I know. Yeah, it's like it's not a big deal.
And
And there were some hard cuts I had to make in this deck too.
oh
Jeez.
yeah, I'm sure. I mean that. I know that maybe sounded sarcastic, but I'm sincere. I also love the inclusion of Overwhelming Splendor, one of my favorite 1v1 cards. It's 6 white for an aura enchant player. Creatures enchanted player control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1, so it's like humility but one-sided. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities, so really just hampers your ability to do a lot. Of course, you can always just cast a destroy enchantment or exile enchantment spell. That's not difficult, but if the opponent doesn't have that, they're just sitting there not able to play Magic at that point.
well, especially if they're in green and their only form of enchantment removal is creature based.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah.
I have Overwhelming Splendor on me, and I'm like, I have like Rex Sage and that other beast thing, and I was like, yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and let that be a lesson to everybody. If you're in green, always don't necessarily always run Crows and Grip, but always consider it because it'll get you out of some
card.
tough spots.
Yep.
So let's move on to the next category here. We have taxing. We have Aura of Silence, Authority of the Consuls, Havoc Festival, Painful Quandary, Smothering Tithe, and Stranglehold. That is a card I have not seen in a long time. I think it's only been printed in commander sets, but it's Stranglehold is 3 and a red for an enchantment. Your opponents can't search libraries. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. So this just shuts off a couple of very, very powerful things that players are trying to do in a game of Magic.
And it's cool because this is like only your opponents as well, where there's other like white effects that can affect yourself. This is just opponents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really nice.
But it's really interesting being red, I thought.
Yeah, and I mean it's sort of like I guess I mean the color for extra turns is blue, and the color for tutoring is, well, for any card is black, but you know blue and green also do a lot of tutoring, and you know like red has had, you know, like red elemental blast or
Yeah.
pyroblast,
they're
where
enemy
it's just
colors.
specific. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they
So
are.
that's what I think that's what we're seeing here. But Smothering Tithe, also a great ramp card. I mean, if you have a white deck, you know, throw Smothering Tithe in there. I run Smothering Tithe in 5-color slivers, so you know, it's good. It's a good card.
It's a good card.
Yeah.
A card I haven't seen in quite a while, and I don't think has ever been reprinted, is Painful Quandary. It's 3 black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. You know, I've been in games where, you know, your life total is too low and you can't take another hit from Painful Quandary, and you can't cast spells because you don't have any more cards in your hand. Like this, you know, it played at the right time. This can really, you know, essentially win you the game just by making a couple of your opponents not be able to play Magic, you know, if they're in that really tight spot. But you know, 5 life is a lot. You can only take so many hits from that. But yeah, definitely a fantastic card, and a card that probably needs a reprint.
Well, and it definitely hates out Storm too, if anybody's storming off on it at your table. This is a pretty strong anti-storm card.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
I just want to point out Authority of the Consuls. This is a nice little cheap enchantment. I think it's perfect here. So it's for a white mana, you get an enchantment that says creatures your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. So not a ton, but it's slowing your opponents down a little bit, or at least leaving them open if you have an attacker of your own that you want to get in the next turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the biggest thing I like about it is that it's just giving you a little bit of incremental advantage, and it's also a really cheap artifact or enchantment, that you can sacrifice to Ghen. And I think that's exactly what you want in this deck, is not only those big splashy curses, but those small enchantments that can enable getting those big splashy curses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
and you'd be you'd be surprised at how like effective Authority of the Consuls can feel.
Yeah.
Because if you get it out early and this deck doesn't have too many creatures, it can really save you a little bit.
Yeah, especially if your opponents
Absolutely.
are going all hasty.
Yeah. You tap that creature.
Yeah, get it out of here.
Yeah. And, Riley, to your point about cheap enchantments that are good sacrifice fodder for again, I looked and there are not any cards that produce enchantment tokens that you can just sacrifice. So
There's I found there's one in this deck, and then there's a cycle of cards that are kind of awkward that I'll talk about now. Basically, there is a cycle. I can't remember what they are, but whenever you untap the creature, you can pay mana and it makes an enchantment token.
Oh, the inspired creatures?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from Theros.
So you have to find a way to
Theros.
tap them,
Yeah.
and then
But I think, and it's in another section here, but, you do have a card in here that does poop out little enchantment creatures. So that is a little bit of fodder. I mean, it's a...
we'll get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an activation
It's a little-
cost. It's a steep activation cost, but it's there.
Yeah.
yeah, it's an enchantment poop.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We definitely have to talk about Havoc Festival. It's 4 of anything, and then black and red for an enchantment. Players can't gain life, and then at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player loses half their life. Round it up.
this would be good with wound reflection.
Sure would.
Yeah,
Oh
just
my god.
kill your opponents. There you go.
Yep.
That's a lot. That's like 12 mana though. That's a lot of mana.
It is.
Yeah.
This does also affect yourself, though, so it is a little bit of a dangerous card.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I love it.
But, I thought this just had to, like, how often do you play Havoc Festival? So,
yeah.
let's put it in the curse guy.
Oh yeah. And you know what? When you've had enough of it, when you're tired of losing life, you can just sacrifice it. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, if you're at the losing end of it, you can just sacrifice it when you have Ghen out. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you can do is, since it's at the beginning of each player's upkeep, you can play it, have the table lose half their life, then before your turn, sacrifice it again to bring out something else so you don't have to lose half your life.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's fair. Yeah.
That's a winning strategy right there.
There you go. And then when you start your turn with Get Untapped, you can just sacrifice something else to bring it back for round 2.
And then it hits the whole table. I never thought of doing that, actually.
There
Well,
you go.
that's why we talk about this, as a group. This is the brain trust here. So we are going to move on to the next category here, which is draw them cards. We have Demonic Lore, Liliana's Contract, Mesa Enchantress, Phyrexian Arena, Spiteful Visions, Treacherous Blessing, and Zancha Sleeper Agent. I really like the inclusion of Zancha and Spiteful Visions. You kind of get that like Rakdos themed group hug, spice in there. I like that a lot. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but that's what it feels like to me, and I like it.
It definitely is. When I was building this with the curses and stuff, I thought Zancha would fit really well in here because we do have like the Curse of Opulence and the Curse of Disturbance that are a little bit more political, and I was like, we have to have Zancha as well, just for that good like Rakdos political kind of stuff going on.
She's almost
Oh,
like
yeah.
a creature curse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very similar to like Captive Audience. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, sadly, we won't be able to get her back with Ghen, but
Yeah,
still cool.
She does work. But Demonic Lore and Treacherous Blessing, these are 2 newer cards that I'm a big fan of, and I think they're perfect in Ghen. So Treacherous Blessing is 2 and a black for an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. And it also has an ability that says whenever you cast a spell, you lose 1 life. And when Treacherous Blessing becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. And then Demonic Lore on the other end is 2 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. It's very similar. But it says at the beginning of your end step, you lose 2 life for each card in your hand. So obviously there's a big downside to having these on the battlefield. But with Ghen, we should be able to sacrifice them away to something better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of steep cost, that's just very much in line with Black's greatness at any cost.
Yeah, and I thought this was a really fun time to use some unique card draw, which is why we have both of those in there. But also a kind of funny one is Liliana's Contract, because it's 3 of anything and 2 black. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards, and then you lose 4 life. It also says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. You won't be able to do that with this deck.
So just forget about it.
But I noticed there is some reanimation strategies that can pick up people's cards from their graveyards. So maybe if you're versing a demon player,
could be a fringe case.
There's some fringe cases. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of demons in Trev's Crick deck. So maybe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, there are.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next category, we have removal. We have Anguished Unmaking, Elspeth Conquers Death, Grasp of Fate, Swords to Plowshares, and The Eldest Reborn. I gotta say, Sagas was a card type that I didn't think about when you first mentioned you were building around this, Eric, and they're a great card type because, you know, you get the value off of them, put a couple lore counters on them, then sacrifice them to Ghen, or not, put that last lore counter on them, let them go to the yard, and then sacrifice some other enchantment to get the sagas back. But you know, they put themselves in the graveyard themselves, so it's just great fuel for Gen's ability to bring enchantments back. I didn't even think about how great sagas would be in here.
Oh yeah, and these two are great sagas. Like Elspeth Conquers Death, that thing is a house. Like taking out one of their big threats, taxing the table for a full turn cycle, and then bringing back something huge out of your graveyard, whether it's a planeswalker or a creature. Yeah, just like great value all around. I'm a big fan of the sagas.
And I'm pretty sure like how sagas are really weird because they say sacrifice after 3.
Yeah.
So you can actually put the 3rd lore counter on and then sacrifice it with Ghen.
Yeah.
And then you still get the trigger from the 3rd, and you can bring something back out of the graveyard.
Yeah.
Greasy. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So sagas are really good with Ghen.
Yeah. Grasp of Fate is another one that's great. With Ghen, it's 1 and 2 white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So it's just great because you can keep bringing it back and dealing with certain threats. You know, other things will come back when Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield, but still you can also, you know, you can just use it in that kind of dealing with whatever is the biggest threat at that time, even if it means bringing back something else.
Exactly. Like you can always make sure that you have your opponent's best thing detained, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Anguish Unmaking and Swords to Plowshares are just solid.
Yeah, can't go wrong. Next up, we have the protection category. We have Fountain Watch, Ghostly Prison, Karmic Justice, Sphere of Safety, and Teferi's Protection. Fountain Watch was a card I had actually never heard of before you put it in this deck. It's 3 white for a 2/4 human cleric. Artifacts and enchantments you control have Shroud.
Yeah, that's obviously a really good ability, and there's not much in our deck that is having us target our own stuff.
No, and Ghen doesn't target the sacrificed enchantment, so you know you're fine there.
Yeah,
and you know, like, this is an Enchantress deck, but unlike most other Enchantress decks, you don't have access to green, so you can't do like the privileged position Sterling Grove thing. But
exactly.
This solves that problem. All in one card. You know, it is a creature, so it is a little easier to remove than an enchantment. But
yep.
But still, this is just people are gonna have to deal with this before they can deal with your enchantments. And I don't think we mentioned this, but the great thing about an enchantment heavy deck is that they are the most difficult permanents to remove from the board. So it just makes your life a little easier, unless you're playing in like a closed meta where people know that's what you're doing and they put like Tranquility or Back to Nature in their decks just so they can blow you out of the water and take you out of any game that you play with them, which is what happened to Riley in the first iteration of our Commander League. But you know, that just happens sometimes when you play in a closed meta.
It does.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good point because obviously this deck gets a lot of strength when you have a lot more enchantments out there, and yeah, they're a more difficult permanent to remove. So
Yeah, and of course, this deck doesn't have a ton of creatures, but you do have Ghostly Prison, which is great. It's just propaganda in white. And Sphere of Safety is really great in an enchantment deck. It's good in like any white deck that you don't have a lot of creatures in. But it's 4 and a white for an enchantment. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So, like I said, in an enchantment build like this card can make it so your opponents really can't afford to attack you, which is just exactly what you want. And Teferi's Protection, which is going to protect you from those mass enchantment removal spells I just mentioned.
Or anything else, like a Torment of Hailfire. Good to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with it.
Bye. That's another card that Riley kind of has PTSD from.
Yeah.
Torment of Hailfire.
Yeah.
That and Sanguinate. God damn
Yeah.
Well, at least it seems like this. What are we on, the third league now? It seems like I think this one has been the most fun, or is this the fourth one?
Third.
This is the
Third. It's the third one. Yeah, right. Because the first one was the Torment of Hailfire, Exsanguinate,
Yes.
and Riley getting enchantment board wiped all in one league.
Yeah.
The last league was Riley with Kadena, Slinking Sorcerer, just like we couldn't do anything, and he was just playing morphs for free.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oy vey.
And drawn cards.
That was a fun deck.
Yeah. Do you still have it? I feel like I asked you if you still had it together, and you said you.
I think you asked me last week.
Yeah.
No, it's apart. I took it apart to salvage it for other decks.
for a more fun play experience for your opponents.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could argue that, but I guess we'll see.
Okay, moving on to the next category we have here, it's Constellation. We have Agent of Erebus, Ajani's Chosen, Archon of Sun's Grace, Grim Guardian, Sigil of the Empty Throne, and Underworld Coinsmith.
Yeah, that one's definitely it. So obviously this is Constellation. All of these things have it. Some of the cards don't physically say Constellation, but they do the same thing.
Yeah,
so
they don't need to say
whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, it does something. So Ajani's Chosen and the Sigil are getting us tokens. Sigil of the Empty Throne is 3 and 2 white, and you get a 4/4 Angel whenever you cast an enchantment spell. So that's some good stuff.
Yeah, the really good ones like Ajani's Chosen or Archon, they trigger when an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, so you'll get that token off of an enchantment coming back from your graveyard, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Agent of Erebos is a card that I don't know if I'd seen it before, but it's 3 and a black for an enchantment creature zombie, 2/2. It has Constellation. Whenever Agent of Erebos or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile all cards from target players' graveyards. So this is just you could forget about having a graveyard type of card. Like this is rough. Even for players that aren't using their graveyard a ton, it just it doesn't feel good to lose that. To lose that resource. But yeah, this is just a rough card.
The one thing I really like about using Agent of Erebos compared to Leyline of the Void, you would think maybe, you should run that for Graveyard Hate. But we do have some, we're going to touch on it later, some graveyard recursion. And so Agent of Erebos lets us, if we have somebody who is a graveyard deck, we're going to exile their graveyard. But if we have opponents that aren't really on that, we can kind of leave their graveyards alone and be able to use them for our benefit later.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And just what I love about this whole section is that all the cards have Constellation, so you're just getting incremental value for what your deck is doing anyway. And I think that's an aspect of any that any deck should have, I guess is what I mean to say.
And talking about we have Grim Guardian, so whenever him or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. And then it's a little bit weirder, but Underworld Coinsmith, you gain a life whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield. but you can pay a white and a black to pay 1 life, and then each opponent loses 1 life.
That's a good rate. In a 4% pod, that's like 1 life for 3.
Yeah.
I do have to say, like, Underworld Coinsmith is a nice enabler for Ghen, just being a cheap enchantment creature that you can sacrifice to Ghen. But overall, like when I had my Orzhov Enchantress deck, the Daxos the Returned deck.
Oh yeah, experience counters.
Yeah, Underworld Coinsmith was underwhelming. So in Ghen it makes sense because you can sacrifice to bring out something bigger, but otherwise, like, I don't really want to be activating that ability because it's, I mean, if you got nothing else to do, then sure, but it's not really where you want to be.
No, it's really not. But we do have all of this incremental damage stuff, because then on top of having Spiteful Visions, and then with the Havoc Festival and stuff, you could find yourself in positions where it's like, I only need to pay 4 mana and I can kill somebody, you know? Like,
yeah. So the next category we have here is some gods. We have Athreos, god of passage, Erebus, god of the dead, Helioid, god of the sun, and Mogus, god of slaughter. Another card type I didn't think about when you mentioned you were going to build around Ghen. You know, if your opponents are able to remove these from the board, it's pretty devastating to be able to bring them back by sacrificing something like Underworld Coinsmith.
Yeah, of course. But obviously, if they are indestructible, like if it's -1/-1 counters, we'll be able to get them back. But usually, people remove gods with exile effects.
Yeah,
sadly,
like a swords to plowshares.
Yeah.
But you know, in that case, they have to be creatures. If they're not creatures, then they need like a revoke existence or some kind of exile enchantment effect. Does revoke existence hit enchantments? It does, but it's not it's like a sorcery speed disenchant that exiles. So it's kind of better because it has that flexibility with exiling, but it's kind of worse because it's a sorcery. And I'm not. I think I'd probably err on the side of disenchant, but I don't run either, so it doesn't matter.
So we'll get to it. Heliod, god of the sun. He's 3 of anything and a white for a 5/6 indestructible. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have vigilance, sure. But here we have the ability. It's 2 of anything and 2 white to create a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature. So we can make enchantment tokens to sack them again to get our real enchantments back from the graveyard.
Nice.
Are you saying that 2/1 creature isn't a real enchantment?
Well, it's as real as any token.
Yeah.
Tokens are cards too.
Tokens matter too. Yeah.
Sorry. It is 7 mana to do that, which is quite expensive. But it is something that is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of the gods don't turn on unless you have devotion.
Right.
The nice part about enchantments, because they're so hard to remove, you're going to be having probably more permanents out there.
Right.
So more often than not, we should actually have our gods online to be a creature for us. Because again, the deck's a little bit lower on creatures, so it's nice to have like a big indestructible body on your side.
Yeah, big old fatty for blocking.
Yeah.
Or attacking if you have Heliod on the battlefield and you just attack and not tap them.
Exactly.
Attacking does not cause Helioid's creatures to tap. Heliod. I don't. I say it like oid. I gotta stop doing that.
Helioid.
Helioid.
It's the Noid.
Oh man. Okay, so
what a reference.
The next category we have here is tutors are good. We have demonic tutor, idyllic tutor, and vampiric tutor. So I think this is 3 weeks in a row that we featured demonic tutor in an episode, and we've probably said it, but great card.
Yeah,
by the way,
it's a good card.
Yeah, no one's doubting that. No one's doubting that.
Good card.
I'm just letting you guys know it's a good card.
Idyllic Tutor is one that was a much needed reprint that we got in Theros Beyond Death.
Yeah.
It's just a 2 and a white. Search for a sorcery. Search your library for an enchantment card. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Very nice. Get whatever you want. And then we have Vampiric Tutor. Eric, I'm wondering why you didn't throw Enlightened Tutor in here, because you have Vampiric Tutor and it's just as much of a card disadvantage as Enlightened Tutor. Was it just like the lack of flexibility? Like you wanted to be able to get anything?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I already have the one Idyllic Tutor for enchantments and stuff. I was looking at that card, but again, like I wanted to throw in some fun cards into the deck.
Yeah.
So I was like, like 3 tutors is still like a good amount.
Yeah, and an Idyllic and Demonic, they put usually an enchantment is what you're going to be looking for, and they put it right into your hand, which is really, really nice. And so if it's between Vampiric and Enlightened and I can run both, I agree. I'd go with Vampiric.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like Idyllic Tutor with its recent reprint is actually at a really good price. So if anybody's looking for enchantment tutors, like pick up the Idyllic Tutors now.
Yeah, because they're just going to creep back up again.
Oh yeah,
They will.
They are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I got a foil one for like $3.
Yo.
A couple weeks after the set came out. I mean, it was curled as hell, but it looks good now because I put it in a double sleeve deck inside a Ultimate Guard Boulder, and
There you
that
go.
that just flattens them right out. So that's what everybody can do with all their Commander Legends foils that aren't foil etched, because they are curdling.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, the etched cards are really nice for that.
No, they are. Yeah, they're great. I don't know why they just don't do just get rid of foiling and just do foil etched going forward.
Yeah.
Because they're super flat. They're flatter than the cards that are just regular finish. Those cards are even curling, but the foil etched ones are super flat. Like they don't seem to curl.
Yeah, I've been impressed.
Yeah, me too. They're very nice. They are very, very nice, especially the ones that are monocolored. I like the most, like as opposed to the gold finish. The ones that are just solid colors are really nice. They're really really subtle, and the gold or like red gold rare mythic rare symbol really does like pop out. They're just very, very, very beautiful cards. But anyways, let's move on to the next category. We already talked about Commander Legends enough. We're not ever going to do it again. So we have advantageous enchantments: Court of Ambition, Dead Man's Chest, Debtor's Knell, Grave Betrayal, Luminarch Ascension, and Starfield of Nyx. Got a lot of goodies in this category. Debtor's Knell is a card that, again, I know I'm saying this a lot this episode, but another card I have never heard of, and I'm really surprised because it's relatively new. It's like 2 or 3 years old, but it's 4 and then 3 Orzhov hybrid mana symbols, so white black. And at the beginning of it's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So, this would be amazing to get onto the battlefield after you've done, if you wanted to sacrifice, a card like one of your cheap enchantments, like Curse of Opulence, or I don't know, like
Authority of the Consuls.
Yeah, Underworld Coinsmith, maybe. I know we're getting on Underworld Coinsmith. It's just fun to say Coinsmith. But sacrificing one of those to get Debtor's Knell on the battlefield, because this is more of a pricey enchantment in terms of mana cost. But
Sure is.
You could also, if you've done a bit of global milling, or a way to like fill your yard with enchantments, it's just going to make your opponent's graveyards a little more juicy for Debtor's Knell. But I mean, at the end of the day, you just play this closer to the point in the game where you have 7 mana, and their graveyards might be juicy by that time anyway. The next category, we have a few board wipes, so in that scenario, you're going to be getting some juicy creatures in the graveyard. But anyways, just a very very cool card that I'd never seen before, and really, really a powerhouse. I think 7 mana is a really reasonable mana cost for an effect like this.
Yeah,
this is a classic. This has been around the block for a while. It was released in Guild Pact.
Oh, really? It's that?
Yeah. This is like an OG Commander staple, I feel.
So it was reprinted in Ixalan?
I think that was looks like that's the RNA Guild kit. So
Okay, so not I that's what I thought the symbol was. That's why I said it was like 3 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, but Debtors now, like, show me your demons. Come on, give me those demons. I gotta win with Liliana's contract here.
Yeah.
I really wanted to put in another court, but I decided to go with just one, the best one I feel, and that's the Court of Ambition. So I know we talked about this card on our Commander Legends, but it's 2 of anything and 2 black for enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. But if you're still the monarch, they lose 6 life unless they discard 2 cards.
Yeah,
that's really rough. And it's going to fuel things like, getting demons into the graveyard with Liliana's contract and, getting them back out with Debtors now. But what's great is, it's going to be relatively easy for you to get the monarch back if somebody takes it from you. You don't have a lot of creatures to get it back through combat damage or to protect yourself from it being taken away from being attacked. But with Ghen, you can, if it's in your graveyard, you can sacrifice something else to get this back, and boom, you're the monarch again. No problem.
Yeah.
And of course, Starfield of Nyx. This is just absolutely perfect for this deck. 4 and a white for an enchantment that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and as long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana costs. So, like basically like a revised Opalescence that also recurs enchantments from the graveyard. It's pretty great.
Yeah,
totally. Of course, like if we do get that out, we could maybe just like swing to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Obviously, the dangerous part about the Starfield of Nyx is now that our enchantments are creatures, they're just much easier to remove.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think it's still good.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting one is the Dead Man's Chest. So it's 1 and a black to enchant creature and opponent controls. Now, when enchanted creature dies, exile cards equal to its power from the top of its owner's library. You may cast spells from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast those spells.
That's pretty. That's quite a bit of card advantage.
Yeah, so obviously we need to somehow kill that creature, but it's quite a bit of card advantage. And when the creature dies, we can always bring this back with Ghen and hit another creature with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks pretty fun.
Yeah. Or if you're in a pinch, it is a cheap enchantment. If you want something out of your graveyard, you can sacrifice this to get something else out.
Yeah.
So next category we have here, I sort of spoiled it, but it's Someone Say Wrath. We have Damnation, Extinguish All Hope, Ruinous Ultimatum, Subterranean Tremors, and Wrath of God. So this category for me is all about getting that 8/8 red lizard with Subterranean Tremors. Nice. I just want to see that just once. Although I do really like Extinguish All Hope. I used to run this in my Phoenix deck, really just to leave my commander on the battlefield, but just destroy most other creatures. That usually hit every other creature on the battlefield, but in this deck it's just perfect. It's 4 black to destroy all non-enchantment creatures, and surprise, it's from the Theros block.
Yeah, so Ghen does still get hit by this, unlike with your Phenax deck, sadly.
No, they can't all be winners.
Yeah, but we do have a decent amount of enchantment creatures and such, so there can be fringe cases where we do get more benefit out of casting that.
Mm-hmm. Or if you have your Starfield of Nyx on the battlefield, like you're fine in that scenario as well.
Yeah, totally. That's when it really shines. But since you mentioned it, the Subterranean Tremors is X in red for a sorcery, and it deals X damage to each creature without flying. Now, if X is 4 or more, you also destroy all artifacts, and then if X is 8 or more, create an 8/8 red lizard creature token. I thought this was pretty interesting as well because there's only a total of 7 artifacts in this deck, and so usually when we're doing the X's 4 or more and getting rid of everyone else's artifacts, it'll probably hit us a lot less than other players as well.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Let's pray.
The next category we have here is Mana Rocks. We have Arcane Signet, Boros Signet, Orzhov Signet, Rakdos Signet, and Sol Ring Signet.
Man, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. Like 2 mana, enters the battlefield untapped, and it taps for any 2 mana in your commander's color identity.
Whoa.
Honestly, I'd be down for a Soul Ring that costed 2 mana.
Sol Ring Signet. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there you go.
Just 2 colorless.
Yeah.
So just the curve looks really good here. This just looks like a solid group of mana rocks. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. Looks great.
Yeah.
Next up, we have maybe my favorite. I like a lot of the names of the categories in this deck. Eric, you always come through with the names of the categories. I'll give you that. But
yeah, it is one thing I try to have fun with.
The next category here, it's a small one, but it's nice artifacts. We have Mage Rite Stone and Thematic Compass, which is a flip card. It flips into Spires of Orazka. Mage Rite Stone is 2 mana for an artifact. You can pay 1, tap it, untap target creature that has an activated ability with tap in its cost. So, obviously we're thinking about Ghen there. I really like that you didn't go crazy with the untapping creature effects or like untapping specifically Ghen effects because, it is, to activate him, it is 3 different colors of mana, and you're going to have to be pretty established in your board state to feel comfortable doing that twice in a turn, having the mana and having the enchantments to untap. So I like that it's just like sprinkled in here, but it's not a ton. If I was building this deck, I probably would have put a lot more in here, and I might have had to play it a couple of times to realize that was just like a bad idea.
Yeah, obviously like late game with that kind of strategy, you can definitely thrive.
Especially if you're making those Heliod tokens, hey?
Oh yeah, let's
talk about mana.
And I chose to put this inside instead of the 1,000-year elixir, just for price's sake, since that card is definitely up there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. Also, Thematic Compass. It is on its front side. It's an artifact that costs 2 mana and has an activated ability where you pay 3 and tap it, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, and then at the beginning of your end step, if you control 7 or more lands, transform Thematic Compass. It transforms into a land, Spires of Orazka, which taps for a colorless mana, and it also taps to untap target attacking creature and opponent controls and remove it from combat. So, it's not ramp on the front side, but it does, get lands into your hand. It keeps you playing that 1 land a turn, which is nice. I've run this in a lot of non-green monocolored decks. It really does a lot of work in those decks. But the flip side is, of course, a Maze of Ith that taps for mana. And, with a deck that doesn't have a lot of creatures, this can just get you out of just... if somebody's playing Voltron, or if somebody's just swinging at you with a big fatty like a Multani or something or whatever, this will just get you out of those situations, which is nice.
Yeah, get that thick boy out of here.
Yeah. Swing at somebody else. Yeah.
Since there's not as many creatures again, it's just some good defense, and so I thought with the deck we should definitely run that, and also obviously to string us into the next category. We should also have the Maze of Ith in here.
Yeah. So in the next category, it's utility lands. Also, just going back a category, both these artifacts are in fact nice artifacts. So apt on the title.
Perfect.
So moving on to utility lands, we have Bojuka Bog, Command Beacon, Gyre Reach Sanitarium, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, and of course the aforementioned Maze of Ith. So Command Beacon I really like as a choice here. I don't know if I would have thought to put it in this deck because the commander is pretty cheap to begin with. He's only 3 mana, but because he's so central to what the deck is trying to do, I think that people are going to try to remove him, or he just might get removed through various board wipes and things like that. So I think Yeah, he's only a 2/3. He'll get hit by a lot of stuff. So yeah, I think that's a good choice. You know, in Marty, you probably don't want to be sacrificing too many lands, but I think Command Beacon's a solid include, and it's cheaper than it's been in years.
Exactly. With that reprint, now's the time to get these Command Beacons. Really good card.
Absolutely. Hall of Heliod's Generosity, another card that's just perfect in this deck. It's for Modern Horizons. It's a legendary land that taps for colorless, and you can pay 1 and a white to tap it, put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. So, you know, if you're just, well, in any situation where you want to get an enchantment out of your graveyard, use it. But maybe you don't want to sacrifice something to get it out of your graveyard, or maybe you want to get that cast trigger off of Sigil of the Empty Throne, and you just, you know, you want to get it back, or you have one of your card draw engine goings, and you just, you know, want to throw an enchantment on top of your library. This card is just perfect in any enchantment build.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Hall of Heliod's Generosity.
It's a bit of a mouthful, that title, but it's a good card.
Hall of Heliod's Generosity.
I also like Gaia Reach Sanitarium, another legendary land that taps for a colorless mana and has an activated ability. You pay 2, tap it. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. So, you know, again, this is a little bit of a group hug card. Lets everybody cycle through their deck a little bit, but this also gives you, Eric, an opportunity to put those thick enchantments into your graveyard, so you can recur them. So I like that little touch there.
Yeah, and then because we're not in blue, like, it's always good to have some ways of extra card draw in the deck, because we want to get to the enchantments that we want to be casting and bringing back and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. So the last category we have here is lands for colors. We have Blood Crypt, Clifftop Retreat, Command Tower, Dragon Skull Summit, Godless Shrine, Isolated Chapel, Luxury Suite, 2 Mountains, 8 Plains, Sacred Foundry, Savay Triumph, Spectator Seating, 8 Swamps, and Vault of Champions. So nice 18 basic lands in here. Very nice. I think that's gonna work out well for you.
Yeah,
Sure hope so.
Sure hope so.
I don't want you to just get like just swamps. You know, that's not going to work for you. But I just, it's just nice to have a healthy amount of basic lands in any commander deck. And also, you're in 3 colors, so I think with like your utility lands, I think that's the right amount. You know, you probably could get away with putting a couple more in there, but I don't think any more than that in a 3-color deck, especially one that doesn't have green in it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Not having the mana ramp. So, but yeah, it's these are the colors. There we go.
Yeah, and the basics are also going to help with the like the check lands, like the Isolated Chapel, Dragon Skull Summit, and Clifftop Retreat, where they check if there's a specific land type in play. So with all those basics, I don't think you're going to run into too many problems. And also you don't really have a lot of tap lands in here other than the Triumph. I don't think there's I guess Bajuka Bog, but otherwise you're I'm really pleased with this. I know you're not doing this for me, but I'm just saying.
I do think
Yeah.
Just to scrutinize the land base a little bit, I do think you're getting a little ambitious with 33 lands, just given the 3.7 converted mana cost average. So I don't know if I agree with you entirely, Kevin. I think Eric needs to eat his vegetables and put a few extra lands in there.
Yeah, or just more ramp. Pieces of ramp, but you know what? That's great because we're at the end of the categories now, and now we can move on to the segment of the episode where Riley and I will make some suggestions on cards that Eric might want to try out in this build.
For sure.
Sure, buddy. So
Sure.
I guess I'll take it away here. First off, I think that after a long, tiresome game, many turns, I think like a replenish or an open the vaults would be a great way to get back into a game after, hopefully you don't have to live through this, but you might run into targeted board wipes like a Back to Nature or just board wipes that hit non-land permanents like a Nev's Disc.
Yeah.
And, this way you can just put everything that's your opponents have destroyed back on the battlefield, or just put everything that you've been sacrificing all game back onto the battlefield. I know Replenish is quite expensive, but Open the Vaults isn't too bad. And I don't know if it was just reprinted.
I think it was
I
reprinted
know
in Double Masters.
Replenish is on the reserve list, which is part of the reason why it's so expensive. Yeah, it was just reprinted in Double Masters. Open the Vaults is 4 white for a sorcery. Return all artifacts and enchantments. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Auras with nothing to enchant remain in graveyards. So it is a global effect, but I always like to advocate for these cards because your opponents will not have built their deck in such a way that is going to benefit them the same way Open the Vaults will benefit you. Open the Vaults has not only gotten me back into games with like SRAM Voltron, but it's won me games. So it's a fantastic card in that way. But because you're doing enchantments, you can also throw Replenish in there.
Replenish is only like $100 US.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, that's not. I mean, honestly, I know you're being silly, but it's like that's not the most expensive card. Like I've spent more on a single card, so like that's not and that's not something that I do. I mean, it is frivolous. It is a frivolous expenditure, but it's not something that I do on a whim. Like that's something that I prepare for. And that's something that is part of my budget when I do spend that kind of money on a single card. But, that's not outside of the realm of possibilities. If you do. And it is on the reserve list. So it is going to, you can rely on the fact that that is money well spent and that it is going to increase in value. So if you do decide that you need that money back or you just want to sell the card, you can do that, and you will make you'll probably at least make your money back. So that's the nice thing about reserve list cards. That being said, I'm not a fan of the reserve list for other reasons.
Yeah, but it exists, so we live with it.
Another card in the same vein as this, and then Riley, you can go. Is Triumphant Reckoning? It's a new one from Commander Legends. It's 6 white. Return all artifact, enchantment, and planeswalker cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So kind of like Open the Vaults, but it only affects you, and it also hits your planeswalkers, which there aren't any in this deck, but that doesn't matter. There aren't a lot of artifacts in this deck either, but it is 9 mana, and when your graveyard is full of stuff that's been destroyed, enchantments specifically, this can get you back into the game. This could very well win you the game. So, I think any of these cards would be solid includes. It doesn't feel good to draw these in your opening hand, but we've all been in situations where we wanted to get all of our key pieces out of our graveyard, and that's why these cards exist.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool new card. Honestly, when I was looking at this deck and when I was looking at options for the deck or things that I might look at if I was building a similar deck, I kind of went down a few rabbit holes. So apologies if I'm a little bit overwhelming with some of the cards on my list, but at least I thought there would lead to some interesting discussions. So as far as the categories go, I tried to follow Eric's categories as best as I could. So the first one I touched on here is the curses category. And the only other curse I could find that might be worth including is Curse of Death's Hold. So 3 black for an enchantment or a curse. It enchants a player, obviously, and it says creatures the enchanted player controls get -1/-1. And the biggest reason I thought this was good is not only is it kind of a nuisance for anybody playing creatures, but it is also a combo with Overwhelming Splendor, because it basically means that player cannot have creatures on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is it's pretty
nice
spicy.
2-card combo.
Yeah, so you get a Curse of Misfortune on them, put an Overwhelming Splendor on them, and then give them a Curse of Death's Hold, and they're just not having a good time. But you are, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the important
Yeah.
part.
yeah, you're playing the curses.
And then another one is in a different category. This is for the draw them cards category. I've got Theater of Horrors. So this is one from, I think it's Ravnica Allegiance. Let me open it up here. So Theater of Horrors is 1 black and a red for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. And during your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. And he also has an activated ability of 3 and a red to have Theater of Horrors deal 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker, which is probably irrelevant. I think you have enough painful enchantments going around that you're probably going to be able to trigger it. So it might be a fun and somewhat reliable way of triggering Theater of Horrors.
Mm-hmm. It is nice though that it's just built in to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just gravy, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good mana sink. If you have enough, you could kill all your opponents. Really.
There you go. Just infinite red mana.
Again, this is a reserve list expensive card. It's not the most expensive reserve list card, but in the going along with the enchantment theme and synergy, and also ramping you a ton of mana, I thought Sarah's Sanctum would be a great include into this deck. It is, almost $200 USD, but I think it would really hum in this deck. The deck itself is not, it certainly doesn't lean towards white, but I think, with all that extra white mana, you can use it as generic mana, and I think it'll, I think it would just be perfect in this deck.
Yeah, Sarah's Sanctum is definitely a super solid card.
Yeah, if price is no option or object.
Yeah, throw that in there.
Yeah.
I remember trying to buy one when they were around $60, and I couldn't find one.
Oh no! Oh no!
It's a sad day.
No kidding.
Don't remind me. Well, I've got some options for removal, and options that meet the enchantment theme. So, I guess I'll run through them here. There's 4 cards that I have in this list. One to kind of match up with the aura theme, Darksteel Mutation, just an oldie but goodie.
I love that
one
card.
generic mana and 1 white for an aura that enchants a creature, and the enchanted creature loses its abilities and becomes a 0/1 indestructible bug. So just a nice way to basically shut off somebody's commander and leave it on the battlefield, so it's difficult for them to deal with it, and it's indestructible, so it's even further difficult to deal with it. There's another one. Now this is one that I hadn't seen before, and there's probably a good reason, but I think it might actually be pretty fun for Ghen. It's called Parallax Dementia. So this is another aura. It's 1 and a black for an enchant creature, or I guess an aura that enchants a creature. It's got fading 1. So fading is this enchantment enters the battlefield with 1 fade counter on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a fade counter from it. If you can't, you sacrifice it. The enchanted creature gets +3/+2, but it says when Parallax Dementia leaves the battlefield, destroy enchanted creature. That creature can't be enchanted, can't be regenerated.
That is cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So it kind of reminded me of what was that blue enchantment?
Acid something, or something acid.
Like acid
Reality
spray
acid.
Reality acid. Yeah.
Reality acid. Yeah.
So very similar
so good
feel.
so good in Brago.
Yeah. So it's a cheap enchantment. You can enchant an opponent's creature if you wanted to. Sure, it gets +3/+2, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're gonna sacrifice it again. It's gonna kill that creature, and it's gonna bring back some other spicy enchantment.
That's very spicy.
That's a pretty fun one.
I really like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Then there's another classic, another Parallax, but Parallax Wave. So 2 white for an enchantment. This one also has fading. It's got fading 5, but it has an activated ability that has you remove a fade counter from Parallax Wave to exile target creature. And then it has another ability that says when Parallax Wave leaves the battlefield, each player returns to the battlefield all cards they own exiled with Parallax Wave. So this templating is kind of like an Oblivion Ring style of templating. Basically, what will happen is you can remove a bunch of fade counters, exile a bunch of creatures, but with those targets on the stack, sacrifice Parallax Wave to Gen's ability to bring back something else, and then everything will be brought back, but nothing's left yet. So that delayed trigger, does nothing, and then everything else is exiled. So you can basically remove 5 creatures, and then sacrifice this for value, and then Bob's your uncle.
Ooh, spicy shit. Yeah, that's so good.
And then the last one, this is a more recent card. It's called Sinister Concoction. You might remember this from Shadows over Innistrad. It's a black enchantment, so black for an enchantment, and it also has an activated ability of black, pay 1 life, put the top card of your library into your graveyard, discard a card, sacrifice Sinister Concoction, and the effect is destroy target creature.
That's perfect.
So yeah, the reason I really like Sinister Concoction is because there's not a ton of ways to both get a cheap enchantment that you can synergize and use for Gen's ability if you really want to, but also self-mill, a discard outlet, and a form of removal, and this does all of it. So it's just a solid role player as far as a piece of removal goes. So I thought it would be an interesting include for Ghen. Yeah,
absolutely. While we're on the removal section, I thought Path to Exile was you have swords in here. I thought that was would be a good include. There's really no reason not to run it. I mean, given the option, I would choose swords as well, but Path to Exile is just as efficient removal. And I think them getting a land is less impactful when you're playing multiplayer, but
yeah, that's actually totally fair for Commander. Like giving them a land, it's kind of like, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe target the player that probably isn't running in basic lands. Then boom, there you go.
Yeah, that's not going to be you, though. Am I right?
Right.
So actually, while we're on the subject of like Path to Exile and kind of boring include cards, I thought that either like Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots would be good includes because, like I said earlier, your opponents will probably want to take Ghen off the battlefield, and this will just allow you to protect him and also use his ability the turn he comes into play, assuming you have the mana to do so. And if he's already been removed once, it's oh man, Google Chrome just crashed on me. It'll be more likely that you'll be able to do that. So kind of boring, but good. There's a reason why there's a reason why they go in every deck.
Okay, you guys want another weird card?
Yeah.
I like weird cards.
So this is one from Judgment. It's called Solitary Confinement. So for 2 and a white, you get an enchantment that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Solitary Confinement unless you discard a card. It says, skip your draw step. It says you have Shroud, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you.
Nice.
So the nice thing about Solitary Confinement is, of course, with Ghen, you can, with its own ability, you can just let it sacrifice itself and then draw a card. But then you can turn around and use Ghen to bring it right back just to protect yourself for another turn. So it just seems like a nice little, in line with that protection theme or that kind of ghostly prison effect. It's just helping to prevent any kind of damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, another card I was thinking of in the removal category was Austere Command, which was just reprinted. It's 4 white for a sorcery. Choose 2, destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So obviously you're never going to pick the second option, but this is just, I run this in SRAM, and I never pick the first option, but it's just great to have that. This is great in any white deck, but specifically in artifact and enchantment decks, it's great to have that kind of flexibility to just take out any of those problem permanents that are just giving you a bad day, causing you to have a bad day, rather.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite Wrath cards, actually.
And it's $1.07.
Yeah, it just got reprinted.
Super cheap.
Did someone say Wrath? So my suggestion for a Wrath is a card called Planar Collapse. I actually run this in my Bant Enchantress deck. It's another card from Urza's Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for 1 and a white, you get an enchantment that says, during your upkeep, if there are 4 or more creatures in play, sacrifice Planar Collapse and destroy all creatures, and those creatures cannot be regenerated this turn. So just a nice way to, well, set up a delayed Wrath. Or if you have Ghen on the battlefield and you don't mind wishing him goodbye, the following turn you could always do this on the upkeep or on the end step before your upkeep and just wipe the board that way.
Yeah, that's very good. And actually, interesting thing about this card, people that listen to our Explained series, MTG, when we did, the last one we did was Time Streams, and this planar collapse is depicting Sarah's realm collapsing, and like Urza's holding that little stone, and he's like sucking all the mana and power into it, and that's what they use to power the Weatherlight.
What a nice guy.
Well, it was going to collapse anyway, so it's fine.
Might as well
get some use out of it. It's no big deal.
You're not using this, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he ferried a ton of Sarans back to Dominaria, so he did. He's trying his best.
he's doing his best as Urza can do.
Yeah. It's hard when you don't have any like real feelings for any other living person or sentient creature.
Yeah.
He's not like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is a very spicy bringing it back so that it triggers on your upkeep, almost like it's happening at instant speed. That's very spicy. I like that a lot. The ramp package in here. So I like the ramp package as it is. The only thing that I would add would be staying in like the 2 CMC realm with the appropriate talismans. And, since they finished the cycle in Modern Horizons, you can do that with this deck. Because, even though the average CMC isn't crazy high, like it's under 4, but this deck still does seem quite mana hungry, which is also why I suggested, I want to say Sarah's Realm, but it's Sarah's Sanctum. I got Sarah's Realm on the brain. You know how it is. But Felwar Stone is also a good 2 mana rock that doesn't come into play tapped, sort of like the precursor to Arcane Signet. You in a lot of 4-player pods, most 4-player pods, you're going to be able to tap it for the colors that you need. In this case, Mardu. Oh, and another ramp card that I was thinking of for this deck was Starfield Mystic. It's
yes.
1 and a white for a human cleric, 2/2. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's the important part, but whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on Starfield Mystic. So this guy, will get incidentally bigger as you sacrifice enchantments, and that's not nothing. That is a nice icing on the cake, but really reducing that 1 cost, that 1 generic cost on all your enchantments is really going to make an impact on a deck like this. I mean, think about what a difference having one of the medallions from Tempest makes in a monocolored deck. I think this is going to have very much the same effect on all of your enchantments here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, now I want to say it.
Yeah, that's perfect. For the constellation category, there's one that I thought of that we actually saw last week as well, but Doomwake Giant might be a nice include here. So Doomwake, for those who maybe didn't listen to the episode or forget what it does, is 4 and a black for a 4/6 giant enchantment creature. It's got Constellation, so whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. So just like in this deck, you're probably getting a few enchantments out on the battlefield in a given turn, so give them -2, -2, -3, -3, kind of in that range. It's probably going to control the board, especially of little go wide strategies or mana dorks and things like that.
Yeah, get them out of here.
Get them.
It's kind of it sort of saddens me to see that that cards like this are on something as cool sounding as The List, but but there it is.
He's got a pretty cool name though, like Doomwake Giant.
He does.
Doomwake.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
I think you put like Giant in anything. I think it's gonna sound cooler. Like if I was like Kevin the Giant, that sounds better.
What if you were Doomwake Kevin?
Doomwake Kevin? Yeah, that would also be an improvement.
Hi, my name's Doomwake.
You call me Mr. Doomwake if you want to get a little more. What is the next card I have here? I have it written down, but let me just check it out here. Okay. Oh, yes. I was thinking this is one of the first cards I thought about when I started looking over this deck list, and it's Demonic Pact. It's 2 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Demonic Pact deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Draw 2 cards, or you lose the game. So at first I was thinking, throw this in the deck and then maybe have some kind of like harmless offering type effect, like harmless offering, and give it to somebody so that they lose the game. But then I was like, that's too many moving pieces, because just the value that this is going to give you by those first 3 choices, those first 3 effects, I think it's totally worth it for 4 mana. And the fact that the before you have to choose, you lose the game, you just use it as sacrifice fodder for Ghen, and then maybe you bring it back so you can remove a creature or deal 4 damage to a player or do any of the other beneficial effects before you have to sacrifice it again to lose the game. I mean, yeah, I guess somebody could set it up so you have Demonic Pact on the battlefield and you're going to sacrifice it with Ghen, and they can clearly see that, and then you have to choose, you lose the game. I know that. I know I'm
living on the
sort
edge.
I'm living on the edge, but you guys know how I play Magic. I live on the edge.
Yeah, you got it.
But
so it's fun.
Yeah, I think this would just be a fun value card, and I don't know. I don't think you're going to get hit too often with the you lose the game, and if you do, take it out of the deck.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, it's $5. I'm surprised by that price. Oh my goodness. I guess it's only been printed once which I think Magic Origins was going to be the last core set ever. Look how far we've come.
Yeah, right.
All right, I've got some tutor options. So for the tutors are good category, first one on my list here is Heliod's Pilgrim. So I think Heliod's Pilgrim's perfect for this deck in the sense that it's 2 and a white for a 1/2 human cleric. It says when Heliod's Pilgrim enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So we're based around curse themes. We've also got some auras for creatures that we could fetch out as well. So Heliod's Pilgrim just seems like, in the similar vein to Idyllic Tutor, probably going to do enough of what you want Idyllic Tutor to do anyway. So I thought it would be a nice little creature, value tutor creature. Another option, Entomb. So Entomb is, in my opinion, like a fantastic tutor. It's so fun to play with. So for a black mana, you get an instant that says search your library for a card, put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. So, of course, with Ghen, we're looking to reanimate things, and those things just happen to be enchantments, and Entomb can get any card. So plop it in your bin, and Bob's your uncle.
There you go.
Another one, which is probably worth considering, it is a little bit more expensive. It's 3 Dreams. So 3 Dreams is 4 and a white for a sorcery, and it says search your library for up to 3 aura cards with different names, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. So again, in the similar vein as we care about auras and curses, this is one way to get 3 of them. And then another one that I came across, it kind of feels similar to Entomb, but I just felt like the synergy potential was pretty great, is Gravebreaker Lamia. So
I was looking at that.
Yeah,
card.
Gravebreaker Lamia is 4 and a black for an enchantment creature, Snake Lamia. It's got lifelink. It's a 4/4. And it says whenever Gravebreaker Lamia enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. But the thing I like about Gravebreaker Lamia is not only does it give you that tutor value like Entomb does, but it also gives you something to sacrifice in that it is an enchantment creature itself. So I thought that was a pretty fun synergy piece.
You know what I like about Gravebreaker Lamia is that she's a snake Lamia.
Yep.
So I think this is the last couple of cards I have here. And it's, if you wanted to add a little more to the taxing category of this deck and still stay on flavor with the Enchantress thing you got going on here, I'd try out Eidolon of Rhetoric and Spirit of the Labyrinth. So Eidolon of, what is I know what they do, but I just want to be specific.
Eidolon of Rhetoric, isn't that the one that only lets you cast 1 card a turn?
Yes, I don't.
So it's each player.
Yes, it's 2 and a white for an enchantment creature spirit, 1/4. Each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn, and Spirit of the Labyrinth is 1 and a white, I believe, for an enchantment creature, and each player can't draw more than 1 card each turn. So you do have a card draw, card advantage package in this deck, but I think there's going to be times where these cards are going to help you. I think they're going to hinder your opponents more than they're going to hinder you, especially since, you can cast 1 spell a turn. But that doesn't affect your ability to bring back enchantments with Gen's ability, or just like swap out and recycle enchantments. So yeah, just adding a little more to that effect. But if they seem to what's the word I'm looking for? If they like pacify what you'd be trying to do while piloting this deck, then I can see in like the early in the late game how you wouldn't want these. But what's great about that is with Ghen, you can just sacrifice them when you're done with them.
Yes, I was going to say they're really great options, obviously, because they are enchantments themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always awesome.
Yeah.
Next one on my list, this is under advantageous enchantments. I know we talked about the importance of trying to reanimate your opponent's demons in order to achieve Liliana's contract. So in that same vein, I've got Animate Dead. Just another powerful aura. You could tutor it up with Heliod's Pilgrim if you chose to put Heliod's Pilgrim in the deck as well, because it is an aura. But for 1 and a black, you basically get a creature from a graveyard, I should say, onto the battlefield under your control, but it gets -1/-0. Womp womp. But yeah, really strong card. You can hit any graveyard. Lots of fun. We like enchanting things and reanimating things. Got to get those demons. In the same vein or a theme as demons, we've got an interesting one here. This is Demonic Embrace. So 1 black for an enchantment aura. This is enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+1, has flying, and is a demon in addition to its other types. There you go. You may cast Demonic Embrace from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs. So the biggest thing I like about Demonic Embrace is it is a nice role player for this kind of deck. Not only does it give you something to put onto Ghen or another creature to make it a reasonable threat, but it also gives you something to sacrifice to get a bigger enchantment out. And when it's in the graveyard, it also gives you a discard outlet to pitch a card to cast it, and then to later sacrifice it to get that pitched card onto the battlefield. So a nice little synergy piece there.
Yeah, actually, that's a really cool synergy for the deck. But I do have to say, getting a demon is the best part of the deck.
There's a couple others that I felt had some nice synergy with this kind of deck. Escape Velocity being one of them. This is red for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has haste. So you could always enchant Ghen if you wanted to get them all hasty. And it also has escape. So escape for 1 and a red. You exile 2 other cards from your graveyard, and you basically cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost. So just another way to get a cheap enchantment. Gives you haste, so you can activate Ghen if you play it on the same turn. And then it gives you a little bit of recursion after the fact if you wanted to get another cheap enchantment out onto the battlefield to sacrifice later for a bigger enchantment.
And it looks like his outfit is falling off too, so that's kind of fun.
Well, you got to go fast.
Yeah, your outfit's going to fall off. Well,
You're going so fast.
yeah, your clothes are falling off.
Yeah. Another cheap aura, another escape aura, I should say. Sentinel's Eyes. You're probably familiar with this.
Yeah.
White for an aura enchantment.
Oh man, in draft.
Yeah, great in draft for sure. But enchanted creature gets +1/+1. It has vigilance, so I know you want to be swinging in with Ghen and then tapping him later. So I got you your vigilance here. But it's got escape for white and exile 2 other cards, so a little bit cheaper than escape velocity. Personally, I think I like escape velocity a little bit better just for that haste synergy.
Yeah.
But it's got a nice cheap escape cost, so a nice way to enable some sacrifice synergies.
Okay, is that everything you have for us, Riley?
No.
Okay.
Peace of mind. So this is a weird one, and I'm probably getting a little bit too far down this rabbit hole at this point. But Peace of Mind is 1 and a white for an enchantment that says it has an activated ability of white and discard a card. You gain 3 life. Similar idea to kind of like that Demonic Embrace synergy. I just felt like this is a cheap enchantment. It's a discard enabler, so you can get a bigger enchantment in the bin. And you can then turn around to sacrifice this and bring out that bigger enchantment. The 3 life is irrelevant. Honestly, you could just say pay a white and discard a card, and I'd probably still consider this as a nice role player.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I like the idea of. I mean, you can clearly see this theme of discard synergies. I'm just looking at this deck from the perspective of like a reanimator deck, but obviously focused on enchantments.
Yeah.
So there's other things you could look at as far as trying to mill things or discard things, like Timurit Calls the Dead. It's another saga if you're looking for some saga synergies. 2 and a black for a saga that puts the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may exile a creature card or enchantment card from your graveyard, and if you do, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So that's the first 2 lore counters there, and then the final one. It's less exciting, but you gain X life and scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. But just a nice way to start churning through your library and getting things into your graveyard. And then I think the last one on my list that's worth bringing up is a new one. It's Wheel of Misfortune.
Okay.
So we talked about this one in our set review episode for Commander Legends, but I really like this effect because it kind of gives you this choice, or I guess everybody at the table a choice of whether or not they want to wheel, because at the end of the day they can choose 0 to have no wheel happen, but it also gives you that little mind game of like, how much life do I want to pay to discard my hand and draw 7 cards.
Yeah, especially with Havoc Festival on the battlefield.
That would be fun. But yeah, that is my long and exhaustive list. So thank you for bearing with me. But this deck definitely inspired me, and I might actually consider building it myself.
Well, that's I think ideally that's what we want our deck text to, the effect we want them to have. It's always nice when we get messages from listeners saying that they they want to, or they have built a deck or a facsimile of it. So I think when we do that, we've done our jobs. So with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Like we said at the top, you can find the link to the list we just covered at the top of the show notes of this episode, and let us know if you're thinking of building around this legend, and if there are any enchantments or any janky cards that Riley might need to know about if he's going to be building this deck. You can do that by emailing us, finding us on Instagram, or commenting on YouTube at Turn One Soul Ring, the podcast. And if you want the most immediate response, DMing us on Instagram is the best way. But commenting, emailing, what have you, whatever works for you, do it. We'll be back next week to continue our MTG Explained series, covering the fourth and final novel in the artifact cycle, which means that Riley's going to get some much deserved time off.
Yeah, after that list.
Well, you're going to have to put this deck together, so you need some time. But as always, thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, everybody. It's always great.
See ya.
All right. Bye now.
The noise.
Turn one soul ring.